I never imagined that my brother's funeral would become the moment my entire family finally saw who I truly was. I thought grief would be the hardest part of that day, but I was wrong. Grief wasn't what shattered me. It was the cruelty of the people who were supposed to love me. It was hearing my own mother agree with the woman who despised me. And it was the shock of watching my 7-year-old son walk toward his uncle's casket to defend my name when no one else would. I need to start with the moment everything snapped into place, because it still echoes through my chest every time I think about it. The church was silent except for the sound of the priest flipping a page in his small leather-bound Bible. Then Karen, my brother Andrew's wife, leaned toward my mother and whispered just loud enough for everyone in the front pews to hear, "At least now he's free from his embarrassing sister." She didn't even try to hide the venom. She wanted it heard. She wanted it to hurt. And it did. I hadn't cried yet that morning. Not during the viewing. Not when they closed the casket. Not when I saw Andrew in that navy suit I helped him pick out last Christmas. But those words struck something deeper than sorrow. They dug into years of being dismissed, ignored, and blamed. I turned to my mother, Margaret, hoping for a simple shake of the head, a soft, "Karen, that's enough." Something. Anything. But my mother actually nodded and said, "She's not wrong. Samantha always brought shame to this family." My breath caught in my throat. Shame. That was the word. The one she had used since I was a teenager, tossed out whenever I didn't meet her standards. Didn't pick the right clothes, didn't choose the right college, didn't marry the right man, didn't live the kind of life she could brag about. I felt myself shrinking inside that wooden pew. I stared at the front of the church where Andrew's portrait sat on an easel surrounded by lilies, and I whispered in my mind, "I'm sorry, Drew. I didn't want this to happen today." Beside me, my son Liam tightened his small hand around mine. He had Andrew's soft brown eyes and the same gentle way of studying people. He didn't understand adult conflict, but he understood tone. He understood cruelty. With his head tilted up at me, he whispered, "Mom, Uncle Andrew loved you. Don't listen to them." Before I could respond, the priest began the eulogy. His voice was warm and steady, but the words felt muffled under the weight of everything just said. I could barely breathe. I kept replaying my mother's voice in my mind, steady and unbothered, as if she'd simply stated a fact. Shame. My own mother. The pew creaked as Karen shifted forward dramatically whenever the priest mentioned Andrew's kindness or loyalty. Every time she flinched or scoffed, she made sure people noticed. She had spent years trying to paint me as the unstable one, the dramatic one, the problem. Today, she was using Andrew's funeral as her final stage. But while I sat there frozen, trying to hold myself together, something shifted beside me. Liam let go of my hand. I looked down, expecting him to tie his shoe or adjust his jacket. Instead, I watched him slide off the pew and walk slowly toward the casket. My pulse spiked. "Liam," I whispered sharply, leaning forward. But Father Thomas gently placed a hand behind him, as if guiding him, as if sensing something important was happening. My son stood on his tiptoes to reach the top of the casket. He placed a sealed envelope on it with both hands. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Andrew's handwriting, the letter he had given Liam a month before he died, the one he said to open when the time was right. Liam didn't look at me. He didn't look at Karen. He looked straight at the priest and said clearly enough that everyone could hear, "Father, Uncle Andrew made me promise to read this letter if Aunt Karen lied about him or my mom. Should I read it?" The entire church inhaled at once, as if every person there had been struck by the same bolt of electricity. Karen's jaw dropped. My mother stiffened. Father Thomas looked at Liam with a seriousness I had never seen before, and in that moment I knew nothing happening today was accidental. Andrew had planned for this, and Liam was about to become the voice my family had silenced for years. The morning of the funeral felt heavier than any storm I had ever lived through. The sky above our neighborhood was a dull gray, thick and unmoving, as if even the clouds didn't know how to shift under the weight of the day. I woke up before my alarm, staring at the ceiling while my heart thudded in slow, reluctant beats. Grief wasn't new to me, but this was the first time it came with a sense of dread. Not because I feared saying goodbye to my brother Andrew. He deserved a farewell filled with love. I dreaded what the living would do in the middle of my mourning. My mother's voice played in my head from the night before. "Samantha, wear something simple. We don't need you drawing attention." She had said it like she was discussing the weather, not her son's funeral. Even in grief, her priority was presentation. And I, as always, was her biggest concern. Liam padded into my room, still in his pajamas. His hair stuck up in soft brown tufts, and his eyes were puffy from crying the night before. He climbed onto the bed beside me and whispered, "Mom, is today the day we take Uncle Andrew to heaven?" He said it with innocence, the kind that made my throat tighten. "Yes, sweetheart," I said gently. "Today is the day we say goodbye." He nodded slowly, processing it, then asked, "Can I bring the letter he gave me?" His small hand rested on my arm, waiting for permission. For a moment, I hesitated. The letter. Andrew had slipped it to Liam during a family barbecue a month earlier. He'd kneeled next to him and said, "You'll know when to open it." At the time, we both thought it was one of his treasure hunt jokes for Liam. But then Andrew died unexpectedly, and the unopened letter took on a different weight. "Yes," I told him. "Keep it safe." Liam nodded with the seriousness of a much older child. When we arrived at the funeral home, the tension hit me immediately. Conversations dropped to whispers. Eyes shifted toward me in the way people look at someone who doesn't belong. I had grown familiar with that sensation over the years. My mother's influence ran deep in the family, and her criticisms of me spread faster than any truth ever could. My mother, Margaret, stood near the entrance of the chapel wearing her best black suit. Her hair was styled, her makeup flawless, her posture impeccable. This was her stage. She greeted people with tearful hugs and practiced sorrow. But when her gaze landed on me, her expression briefly hardened before she smoothed it over. "Finally," she said, "we were waiting." "We're not late," I replied, checking the time. "Barely," she said. Karen stood beside her, arms crossed tightly over her chest. She wore a fitted black dress, her blonde hair curled professionally, not a single strand out of place. Her eyes skimmed over me with open disdain. "Glad you could make it, Samantha," she said. "I wasn't sure if you'd show." "I'm here to say goodbye to Andrew," I said calmly. She scoffed. "Yes, well, let's try to keep today dignified." My jaw clenched. Liam squeezed my hand. Inside the chapel, the air smelled of lilies and polished wood. Andrew's portrait stood at the front, resting on an easel draped in white fabric. He looked warm and alive in the photo, wearing the exact grin he used whenever he said something sarcastic and tried not to laugh at his own joke. I walked slowly down the aisle with Liam, every step feeling heavier than the last. Waves of memories hit me. Andrew teaching me how to ride a bike. Andrew defending me during high school when our mother called me difficult. Andrew showing up at my divorce hearing with coffee and a hand on my shoulder. He was the person who turned painful days into manageable ones. When we reached the casket, I rested my hand on the polished wood. "I'm here, Drew," I whispered. Behind me, I heard Karen's voice softly but sharply say, "Unbelievable." I ignored her. I didn't have the strength to fight. The pews filled slowly. Relatives whispered behind programs. My Aunt Lydia looked at me with sympathy, but like always, she said nothing. Silence was safer in this family. As the priest prepared to begin the service, Margaret leaned forward and whispered instructions to him in a tone that suggested she had already curated the perfect version of Andrew's life story. I sat with Liam in the second row, and for the first time since Andrew died, dread pushed harder than grief. This wasn't just a funeral, it was a battlefield disguised in black clothing and folded hands. And somewhere deep down, I sensed that Andrew knew this day would come. That was why he gave Liam the letter, and why everything was about to change. The service had barely begun when the tension in the room shifted from silent discomfort to something sharper, something that clung to the air like static. Father Thomas stepped up to the podium, opened his notes, and began speaking in a warm, steady voice about Andrew's generosity and the way he cared for the people around him. For a moment, I let myself breathe. Hearing his name spoken with kindness felt like a balm, but it didn't last. Halfway through the opening prayer, Karen let out a dramatic sniff that wasn't grief so much as a signal that she wanted attention. She dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, making sure everyone saw the embroidered K on the corner. When the priest mentioned Andrew's love for his family, Karen straightened her spine and said loudly, "He always did everything for the people who deserved him." Her gaze drifted directly toward me. A few relatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My stomach tightened. I lowered my eyes to the floor, trying not to show how much she was affecting me. Liam sat pressed against my side, watching Karen carefully, his little face tight with confusion. Father Thomas tried to continue, but Karen raised her hand. "Actually, Father, if I may speak now," she said. He blinked, surprised. "There is a scheduled time for family remarks later." Karen smiled sweetly. "I understand, but Andrew was my husband. I would like to honor him properly. Now." Margaret nodded approvingly, as if she were Karen's silent partner in all of this. "Let her speak," she whispered to the priest. Father Thomas didn't want conflict on a day meant for peace, so he stepped aside. Karen marched to the podium with rehearsed grace. The moment she opened her mouth, I felt dread crawl up my spine. "Andrew was a wonderful man," she began, "but he struggled with people who took advantage of his kindness." My heart dropped. She continued, "He spent years trying to fix damaged relationships. He tried so hard to protect our family from negativity, chaos, and unnecessary shame." Every word was a blade pointed straight at my chest. She wanted the entire church to hear her version of the truth. My uncle shifted in his seat. My cousin Dana looked down awkwardly. People knew Karen's tone. They recognized her need to control the narrative. But here, at Andrew's funeral, they let her speak because confronting her felt disrespectful. Karen leaned closer to the microphone, her voice dripping with false sorrow. "Andrew always felt responsible for people who couldn't get their lives together. He carried burdens that weren't his to carry." Her eyes locked on mine, and there it was, the unspoken accusation. I was the burden. I gripped the edge of the pew so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My throat tightened. Every instinct told me to stand, to defend myself, to demand she stop using my brother's funeral as a weapon. But I stayed still. Andrew wouldn't have wanted me to escalate things. Karen's voice sharpened. "At least now he is free from certain people who constantly disrespected him and dragged this family down." The church froze. The words echoed through the air like a slap. I swallowed hard, blinking back tears. My mother reached over and patted Karen's hand in approval. "Beautifully said," she whispered. "Beautifully said. About me. At my brother's funeral." Liam's small fingers curled around my arm. He whispered, "Mom, she's lying. Uncle Andrew never said that." I blinked down at him, throat so tight I could barely breathe. "I know, sweetheart." Karen kept talking, twisting Andrew's memory into something unrecognizable. She spoke of loyalty while simultaneously destroying it. She spoke of family while tearing it apart. She spoke of Andrew's regrets, implying that I was one of them. Then, as if wanting to deliver one final blow, she ended with, "Some people in this family never appreciated Andrew, and he hoped one day they would understand the damage they caused." It was a masterpiece of manipulation, wrapped in forced grief. Father Thomas returned to the podium, gently thanking her, though his expression revealed discomfort. The entire room felt off balance, as if Karen's poisonous words had shifted the atmosphere. As the priest prepared to continue, Liam suddenly stood up. I turned in shock. He stepped out of the pew with quiet determination, his sneakers barely making a sound on the carpet. He walked toward the aisle. "Liam," I whispered urgently, "come back." But he didn't turn around. Karen noticed him approaching the front and muttered, "What is he doing? That child needs to sit down." Liam ignored her. His pace was small but steady, purposeful, like he had made a decision far bigger than himself. He walked right up to the casket. Then I saw his hand slip into his suit jacket and pull out the sealed letter Andrew gave him. My heart stopped. The moment Karen used Andrew's name to shame me, something inside Liam seemed to snap. He looked at the casket, then at the congregation, then at the priest, and in that moment, a silence deeper than any I'd ever heard settled over the church. Something was about to happen, something none of them were prepared for. Liam stood at the front of the church like he'd been called there by something larger than himself. The people in the pews shifted and craned their necks, confused and curious. Children don't usually interrupt funerals. Children don't challenge adults. Children don't step between lies and the truth. But my child did. I rose halfway from my seat, torn between grabbing him and respecting whatever he felt called to do. Before I could move, Father Thomas gently lifted a hand toward me. He didn't say a word, but the message was clear. Let him speak. The priest stepped back just enough for Liam to stand beside him. Liam's small fingers held the letter tightly, pressing it against his chest as if it were armor. He took a slow breath, the kind a child takes when trying not to cry. Karen's voice broke the quiet. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, rising from her seat. "Someone get him down. He has no place up there. This is inappropriate." Her tone cracked through the air like glass shattering. But before she could take a step, my cousin Mark placed a firm hand on her arm. He shook his head once. Karen looked shocked, as if no one had ever dared to restrain her in public before. She hissed, "Let go of me." Mark didn't. His eyes stayed fixed on Liam. My mother leaned forward, her expression tight. "Samantha, go stop him. This is embarrassing enough." But I stayed frozen. For the first time in my life, I wasn't moving according to her instructions. My heart told me to stay still, to let Liam speak. Liam looked up at Father Thomas, his eyes wide but steady. "Father?" he said softly. "Uncle Andrew told me to read this if Aunt Karen said something that wasn't true. She said he was trying to get away from my mom, but that's not what he told me. He said my mom was the only one who understood him." A wave rippled through the room. Whispers fluttered like wings. Karen exhaled sharply. "He is a child. He doesn't know what he's talking about." But Liam continued, ignoring her. "He gave me this letter at our barbecue. He said he needed me to keep it safe because sometimes grown-ups lie when they're scared." Karen shot up from her seat again. "Enough! Father Thomas, stop this! This is getting out of hand!" Father Thomas turned his gaze toward her, calm but firm. "Karen, the church is a place of truth and testimony. If Andrew entrusted this child with something important, we will hear it." Karen's face twisted with rage. Liam swallowed hard and placed the letter gently on top of Andrew's casket. His small hand lingered there for a moment, as if saying goodbye in a way no adult had been able to manage. Then he turned back toward the priest. "Should I read it, Father?" His voice wavered, but he didn't back down. Father Thomas stepped forward and placed a hand on Liam's shoulder. "I believe your uncle trusted you, and today is about honoring his wishes." The priest's approval gave Liam courage. His shoulders straightened. He opened the envelope with careful fingers, unfolding the paper like it was the most delicate object in the world. Karen's breathing turned shallow and fast. She whispered to my mother, "Stop this. Make her stop him. Do something." My mother didn't move. For the first time all day, she looked uncertain, like the ground beneath her had shifted. Liam unfolded the letter fully. His eyes scanned the page as he took another small breath. He looked so young up there, but so determined it broke my heart. He began reading, voice trembling but clear. "This is from Uncle Andrew," he said. "He told me to say it exactly how he wrote it." At that moment, the entire church fell silent. Not just quiet, but reverently still, the way people wait for something that might change the way they see the world. Liam hesitated. His eyes flicked toward me, searching for reassurance. I nodded once, giving him the strength he needed. He lifted the letter, held it with both hands, and read the first line. "If you are hearing this, it means someone is trying to rewrite the truth." Gasps rose from the pews. Karen froze mid-breath. My mother's face drained of color. Liam continued, his voice gaining strength with each word. He read Andrew's handwriting, Andrew's thoughts, Andrew's truth that Karen had tried to bury beneath her performance. This was the moment the funeral stopped being a ceremony and became a reckoning. It was the moment my son stepped into the role Andrew had trusted him with. It was the moment my life, and my family's understanding of it, pivoted entirely. And once the truth began pouring from that letter, nothing Karen or my mother said would ever have the same power again. Liam held the letter in both hands, his fingers trembling, but his voice grew stronger with each word. If you are hearing this, it means someone is trying to rewrite the truth." The silence in the church deepened until it felt like the walls themselves were listening. Karen dropped back into her pew, her face stiff, her breathing shallow. My mother stared straight ahead, not blinking. Liam continued, "I never wanted my death to become a stage for anyone's lies, especially not yours, Karen. Stop using my funeral to pretend you were the only good thing in my life." People gasped. A woman in the third row covered her mouth. My Aunt Lydia whispered, "Oh my God." Liam swallowed and kept reading, courage stretching through his voice. "Karen, you spent years trying to turn my family against each other. You demanded loyalty you didn't show. You tried to make Sam feel like she was nothing, even though she was the one who stood by me every single time my life fell apart." Karen shot to her feet, her voice cracking with rage. "This is fake. She made him write this. That boy is reading lies." Father Thomas stepped in front of her. "Sit down," he said quietly. Karen froze. No one had ever spoken to her like that in public. She lowered herself slowly into the pew, but her eyes stayed locked on Liam with toxic fury. My heart pounded as Liam read the next lines. "Sam, if you're standing there hearing Karen talk about you like you were a burden, know this: you were never the problem. You were always the one who tried. You forgave when you shouldn't have. You showed up when others didn't." My breath caught. Tears blurred my vision. Andrew's voice filled the room, even though he was gone. "You were the one who sat with me in the hospital when everyone else said they were too busy. You were the one who helped me pick out the suit I'm probably wearing right now. You were the one I trusted with things I couldn't tell anyone else." The people around us shifted, whispering softly, processing every confession. Karen shook her head violently. "He never told her anything. She is delusional." But Liam didn't pause. "Mom," he read, "you blamed Sam for everything she couldn't control. You judged her for choices she made during pain you never bothered to understand. Stop hurting her to protect your pride. She deserved better from you." Margaret's hand flew to her mouth, her shoulders curled inward for the first time in my life. She looked small, human, fallible. The truth was stripping away all the posturing. Liam took a breath, then read the next lines with clear determination. "I want everyone in this church to know that my sister was the best part of our family. When I struggled with my marriage, she listened. When I fought with Karen, she showed up. When I felt like I had no one, she reminded me I did." Karen slammed her palm against her knee. "Stop. That's enough." She stood again. "This entire letter is manipulation. Andrew would never accuse me." But Liam didn't stop. "And Karen," he read, "if you're standing there pretending you were a perfect wife, stop. I loved you, but you spent years trying to control everything around you, including me. You lied to our families, you twisted my words, and you tried to make Sam look like a failure so you could feel like a success." The room pulsed with shock. Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Liam read the final paragraph slowly, voice cracking with emotion. "I asked Liam to keep this letter because he is the only person I trust to tell the truth without fear. My nephew is braver than the adults in this room. If he is reading this, then I need all of you to hear something clearly. The person who understood me best, who cared for me most, who never abandoned me, was Sam. Not because she was perfect, but because she loved without asking for anything in return." My tears fell freely. I covered my mouth to hold in a sob. The church was utterly still. Liam folded the letter and placed it gently back on the casket. His small voice carried through the silence. "Uncle Andrew said that people lie when they're scared, but he wasn't scared to tell the truth." He turned to face the congregation. "But I'm not scared either." The room erupted, not in chaos, but in the stunned, reverent shock that follows the unveiling of something undeniable. People looked at me differently, not with pity, not with judgment, but with clarity. Karen's body collapsed back into the pew. Her face was pale, her confidence shattered. My mother stared at the floor, tears streaming down her cheeks, finally recognizing the damage she helped create. Everything Andrew had tried to protect me from had been dragged into the light by the bravest person in the room. a 7-year-old boy who refused to let lies bury the truth along with his uncle. And nothing would ever be the same after that. The silence after Liam finished reading felt heavier than the moment they closed Andrew's casket. It wasn't ordinary quiet. It was the kind that follows revelation, the kind that forces people to confront everything they tried to ignore. The air in the church shifted, carrying a truth that couldn't be stuffed back into the letter Liam had folded so carefully. Father Thomas placed a gentle hand on Liam's shoulder, guiding him back toward me. My son walked slowly, clutching the letter with both hands, his eyes shining with a mixture of sadness and pride. When he reached me, he climbed onto the pew and threw his arms around my neck. I held him so tightly that I felt his heartbeat pressing against my chest. He whispered, "I did what Uncle Andrew wanted, Mom." "You did more than he ever imagined," I told him. When I lifted my head, the congregation was still processing what they'd heard. Some people cried quietly. Others sat stiff, hands clasped tightly in their laps. My Aunt Lydia wiped tears from her cheeks and mouthed, "I'm so sorry." My cousin Dana watched me with an expression that was equal parts regret and understanding. Years of whispered judgments were unraveling right in front of them. Karen, however, sat rigidly in the front pew, her jaw clenched, her hands gripping her thighs so tightly, her knuckles turned white. She stared straight ahead as if refusing to acknowledge the impact Andrew's words had made. Her pride was a wall she couldn't climb down from, even when the truth was written in her husband's own handwriting. My mother's reaction was different. Margaret had always been immovable, shaped by decades of stubbornness and pride. But in that moment, she looked like someone who had been cracked open. Her face had lost its practiced composure. Her lipstick smudged as she pressed trembling fingers against her mouth. She wasn't crying the elegant, controlled tears she typically crafted for public moments. These were raw, unfiltered tears, the kind that come from facing the truth. After Father Thomas finished the final prayers, people slowly began rising from their seats. Instead of walking toward Karen, as they normally would, they approached me. They hugged me. They apologized. They admitted things. "I should have asked your side of the story," my uncle said. "We were wrong about you," my cousin admitted. "Andrew always talked about how much he loved you," an older family friend added, shaking her head. Their words made me emotional, but there was a strange clarity inside me. For the first time, I wasn't desperate for approval or validation. I wasn't begging to be understood. The truth had been spoken, and it wasn't my job to reinterpret it for anyone. Andrew had done that for me. Liam had delivered it. And now the truth lived in front of all of them. Karen finally stood and approached the casket. She didn't look at me, but her expression had lost its arrogance. For once, she seemed unsure. She brushed her hand along the top of the casket, then looked at Liam's letter, but didn't touch it. She attempted to speak, but her voice trembled uncontrollably. She walked past me without acknowledging me. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. My mother approached next. She moved slowly, like someone walking through a storm they never expected to encounter. When she reached me, she stopped and looked at Liam first. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "You're a brave little boy." Liam nodded politely but stayed pressed against my side. Then she looked at me with eyes I hadn't seen since childhood. Not hard, not judgmental. Soft, human. "Samantha," she whispered. "I didn't know. I should have listened to you. I'm sorry." For a moment, I didn't speak. Her apology wasn't a magic cure. It didn't erase years of damage. But it was real. And for the first time in my life, she wasn't defending herself. She was facing her own actions without excuses. "Thank you for saying that," I replied quietly. It was all I could manage, and it was enough. As the funeral ended and people drifted out of the church, I stood beside Andrew's casket one last time. I rested my hand on the cool wood. "You found a way to protect me even now," I whispered. "Thank you." Liam took my hand. "Mom, Uncle Andrew knew they weren't fair to you. That's why he trusted me." "He trusted you because you have a good heart," I said, brushing his hair back. He looked up with that same mixture of innocence and courage that had carried him to the front of the church. "I did what was right." "Yes," I whispered. "You did." As we walked out into the cool afternoon air, something inside me felt lighter. Not because everything was fixed, not because every wound was healed, but because the truth had finally been spoken in a place where lies had lived for too long, and it came from the smallest voice in the room. The truth didn't just set me free, it reset everything. In the end, walking out of that church with my son's hand in mine, I realized something I had spent years trying to understand. Family isn't defined by blood, appearances, or the loudest voices in the room. It's defined by truth, loyalty, and the people who stand with you when it matters most. Andrew protected me even after he was gone, and Liam reminded me that courage doesn't always come from age or authority. Sometimes it comes from a 7-year-old who refuses to let lies replace love. If this story touched you, moved you, or reminded you of your own journey with family and truth, I want to thank you for spending this time with me. Your support means more than you know. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like it, share it with someone who might need it, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt, powerful stories every week. Your engagement helps this community grow, and it means the world to me. Thank you for listening, for supporting, and for being part of a space where truth matters.